Hey everyone, 2022 is going to be a very exciting year for North American League of Legends for a lot of different reasons. And really, in general, it's because there are some very exciting storylines already being set up based on things that happened towards the end of last year, things that we expect to happen in the year to come, the way the offseason played out, all of those things. So today I want to highlight a few of the big storylines that I'm personally most excited to follow. And, there's going to be a little bit of a certain direction that a lot of this goes in, just based on my own personal interests, but there are a lot of other storylines out here that are building up that I may not mention, and I'd love to hear what those are in your in the comments to this video. What your favorite storylines are that are setting up. But we're going to talk about a few of my favorite ones, and we're going to start by one that I think is going to be at the forefront of many people's minds, not least because it has to do with one of the very most popular teams in North America, but also because it's so interesting whether you're in favor of it or against it. And of course, that is Cloud9's kind of trailblazing approach to the year to come. What they did this offseason, remaking so much of their team, bringing in Summit, managing to bring in Berserker, what they're trying out with Winsome, hiring LS, all of these things are pushing very clearly in one certain direction that I don't think a team has ever pushed so hard in before. You can start with LS if you want and just say the way he approaches the game, the way he communicates about the game, and just the place he holds in the League of Legends esports community. All of these things are very unique, and Cloud9 are committing to that and saying, look, we're going to go in this direction that, not only one voice, but one very clear voice has been advocating in for a while, and we're going to play it out, and we're going to see if we can actually turn these ideas into a reality and make them work. You can call it the Korea is greater than NA approach or whatever it's going to be, but I think it's such a fascinating concept that obviously South Korea has a stronger League of Legends community and environment than North America does, that produces so much talent, all these world championships and all these other things. People go there from North America to boot camp and play in their solo queue, and the culture. There's so much talked about with that. To the extent that Cloud9 are saying, we are going to bring in Korean mindsets and Korean players to the absolute greatest extent possible and prove that we can transplant these in North America and dominate the scene with very, very high competitive goals of, winning both splits, going to top four at Worlds as a minimum. These are the things that they publicly stated. These are our goals. They're going so far in this direction that, anything Korean is basically superior to anything that is inherently North American, that they found Winsome, who was playing in the third tier of Korean competitive play. They found that he has this dual citizenship or a North American parent, or where he was born. I can't remember the exact details, but they're saying basically he has a technicality that allows him to declare North American residency, but he is a Korean player for all rights and purposes. And we think that he's better than any support we could find with North American, that has played in North America before, that or that would have come inherently from the North American system. And so they believe so strongly in that they're bringing him in. They're going to make him their starter, once he's actually able to get in with the visa and all those kinds of things. Probably not going to be playing in lock-in. So I think just this this set of all these things and the clash between the traditional North American approach, if you want to call it that, and the new school, the Korean direction is better. The challenge of LS proving himself, the challenge of I haven't even mentioned the Fudge role swap, saying, hey, we believe in Fudge so much that we think after 1 year in the LCS as a top laner and the amount of growth he showed, we can just role swap him into mid, and we believe that that fundamental skill is enough to just carry him through that role swap, and he's going to be great there too and be best mid in LCS. All of these things, there's just so much to unpack there. You can spend hours and hours and hours talking about all this stuff, and I'm sure people will, which is what makes this one of probably the biggest story of the North American season to come. So we'll see how it all plays out. I can't wait to see. I know that there is a lot of potential for people to get upset with each other and to flame each other about all these things, no matter kind of if you're strongly in favor of what Cloud9 are doing, or if you're strongly against it, or even if you're somewhere in the middle. I think people will be expressing a lot of strong opinions. So I hope that while that is exciting from a content point of view and from a fan engagement point of view, I hope that people can be civil about it all. And that's kind of the approach I'm going to be taking and trying to pioneer, as I always do. But I can't wait to see how that all comes together. Another topic that I'm very excited about, and it's kind of the opposite direction in some ways to some of this, is the Evil Geniuses young guns that they're bringing in for the LCS team. So we saw Danny come in for summer. We're seeing jojopyun get promoted. You've heard me talk about jojopyun so much. You've heard me talk about Danny a lot. You've heard me talk about this entire org, but, obviously I can't just not include it on this list just because you've heard me talk about it before. This core of very young carries, very, very inexperienced and very young in their actual age, and both inherently North American players, can a team actually succeed and go to Worlds with two, brought up in NA, very inexperienced young players as their carries? If they fail, that's going to really hurt the NA talent development kind of storyline, and other players will have to come in and succeed in their place in order to kind of keep that NA talent momentum going. If they succeed, it could be really huge for convincing other orgs that, like, hey, there have to be other players out here like these two guys, and we got to be the ones trying to find them and bring them up, because, in a lot of senses, it should be cheaper and easier to develop a North American player than it is to pay a premium to import another player with a similar quality level. Maybe not, but this is what EG are trying to achieve and trying to prove to others by doing this. And they wouldn't be the first ones to bring up a young North American player who turns out really well. We've got other examples of that, but doing two of them coming in at once in such important roles for the team, very exciting to see how that plays out. But again, I've talked about these guys a lot, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I am going to continue the theme a little bit, because I think another huge storyline for 2022, and this comes with a kind of a single leading exemplar, but it ties into a larger movement, I think, and that is Sniper Year One. So 100 Thieves, I did a separate video about this, the day they announced the signing, but General Sniper, I believe he's just going by Sniper now going forward, just recently turned 15, so he's eligible to play an amateur. It's a player, his name has been on people's lips for a long time, and he's somebody that people will describe as a potential generational talent. Lots and lots of buzz about this player and what's he going to do now that he can be in a great org like 100 Thieves that are going to be able to give him that coaching, that development, that experience of playing in a team environment. And can he be, everything that people are hoping he's going to be? So we're, watching him play this year, I think he's going to have a ton of eyes on him, and I'm going to be trying to drive some of those eyeballs to him because I think it's worth it. And I hope he delivers on that. But I think, as I said, I think he's a bit of a leading figure, or kind of the vanguard of a movement of potentially an NA amateur kind of generational turnover. So obviously in 2021, the ecosystem of academy and amateur was kind of rewritten in some ways. The whole proving ground system came in. Riot started in North America putting some real intentionality and structure into how are we going to make our amateur scene work for players to create a pathway to pro that's smoother. It's not just a straight jump from kind of nothing into academy. And so I think last year there was a lot of great stuff that came out of that. But one of the interesting things was it was really the amateur veterans who led the story for the most part. You had players like Fivefire, APA, Winston, Fnatic, Darkwings, Value, all these kinds of players who had lots of experience in kind of the amateur level. They had been very well known in this kind of sub-academy level for a while. They had fans from streaming or from these tournaments. Some of them had played in academy before, or even some time in LCS before. If you look at kind of Viper and Anda and what they did with no org, I think 2021 NA Amateur was really a veteran scene, relatively speaking. In terms of being a veteran as an amateur. And I think now for 2022, what we're seeing is there's some turnover and there's some shift happening there that I think will be, if it plays out successfully, I think will be very healthy for the long run for North America. I think the real big attention going into 2022 is players like Sniper, who, the 15 and the 16-year-olds, which there was, they're not the first ones of that age to come in and be relevant here. In 2021, obviously we have jojopyun turning 17 at the end of the year and becoming eligible for LCS. We had Danny, who was promoted very young, not quite as young. You had Will coming in, who as a 16-year-old in academy in summer. There were these players, but now we've got Sniper, we've got his twin Crimson, we've got Bluster, who briefly made an appearance in amateur. We've got Griffin. We've got a bunch of names now in that 15, 16-year-old range who I think are probably going to start capturing more of the mind share compared to the Five Fire APA kind of generation, or even Bradley, who was the kind of the number one amateur kind of prospect in most people's eyes in summer. Who was 20 during summer, and that's, I'm not saying that that's a problem or a limitation for him or anything like that, but there's a bit of a different vibe when your leading prospects or your best players in the amateur scene are mostly 2021 compared to if they're a whole bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds that everybody's talking about. So I think there's this kind of true youth movement coming in that personally I'm very excited about for the North American amateur scene, and I hope that these players don't have to come in and be better than Bradley or better than Five Fire, but to be able to compete with them and contest them and show that they are, the next thing coming in, and that there's going to be this, hopefully over time, healthy, continual turnover of players, a renewal as players kind of maybe go to school or retire from the scene. They need to be replaced by someone, right? And that's what's exciting here is the potential to see more and more names coming in that have a churn, a natural churn to it, and a healthy churn to it. So, Sniper is kind of like I said, kind of the vanguard of this, the big example of the youth movement turnover. But I think there are a lot of other names behind him that we'll be talking about throughout the year. Excited for that. And then finally, another kind of big pivot or direction shift, a big storyline here is I think all the players in waiting that we have. We've got obviously players like Jensen, Niski, Mickey X, who are there. I mean, Double Lift, if you want to throw his name in there, who are there in theory available to be signed as a mid-split or a mid-year kind of a backup plan or a panic button, if you will. And if some of these kind of more risky plans don't work out, if some of the really young players or the kind of the fresh imports or things like that are not playing out, who is going to be the one to kind of break formation and say, no, we do need to spend and give Jensen what he wants to make him comfortable? Will it be a team that he wants to come into? I think that applies for all these players. They wouldn't necessarily join just any team just for a paycheck, but can they be brought back in into the league along the way, or will they remain on the sidelines? I think this is a question that a lot of people are going to continue to raise. We saw it raised, during and right after the offseason as it happened. Already players who haven't even had a chance to try as rookies being said, oh, I think there's always going to be this question around them. Are they going to get replaced by Jensen after a few bad weeks or stuff like that? And I think this is going to continue to come up, whether it comes up front and center or whether it's more of kind of a background. It shows up in a couple of Reddit comments, every post-game thread, whatever it's going to be. I think it's going to be there, and it's a story that people are going to be tracking, right? And it's a question that's going to be persistently asked, and we'll see how it gets answered and by which teams. So these are only four of the really big storylines that I'm personally excited about and going to be tracking. As I said, I think there are a ton of other ones that are very interesting. Like there are some really big teams that I haven't even mentioned in here. TSM with their Chinese imports, Team Liquid with their super team, and obviously Bjergsen, him coming back. That's a big deal. What's going to happen with Core JJ and his green card status? Lots and lots and lots of storylines that we can talk about throughout the league. So 2022 going to be a great year. And we're so close to it all kicking off with lock-in beginning later this week, North American Amateur beginning this week, Academy next week. Can't wait for it to all happen. And I hope that you feel the same excitement I do.